Alyssa White. I'm here to address changes to recent central office staffing that have happened over the past 8 months. The disrespect shown to a long-term employee by our current district leadership, and the need for clear leadership and planning for diversity, equity, and inclusion work in Lakota. For the past 8 months, the reorganization of central office, multiple employees leaving the district, one role being created, multiple other roles not filled, seems to have be entirely reactive as opposed to proactive, lacking a strategic plan for reorganization. This is not in the best interest of our district. I'm extremely concerned about the workload being placed on the Student Services Department. 1.25 FTEs of workload, not including the most recent move of a teacher on special assignment, have been absorbed by that department. The new assistant superintendent might, maybe, take on a piece of this, because what that role entails still appears to not be fully sorted out or communicated. But there doesn't seem to be a clear plan for how these additional FTEs will be absorbed or covered. This is a recipe for overworked, overburdened employees. Our district deserves a clear, well-planned, well-communicated, deeply employee-involved restructuring of central office roles rather than a reactive and piecemeal plan. I'd also like to address the recent move of an employee who was, quote, a teacher on special assignment to a classroom position. This move was done to an employee of 22 years who has been in that role for 8 years. She was presented at the August 9th Community Diversity Committee meeting as a member of Lakota Office Central Office Diversity Staff, and yet less than 48 hours later was moved to a classroom role. This is frankly disrespectful and a terrible employee relations move at a time when multiple sources have shown staff retention is a huge community concern. Over the past 8 years, there have been multiple other last-minute classroom staffing needs, but this employee was never moved to a classroom before. Yet now, after a documented 2.5-year attack on DEI initiatives in our district, and after a board member specifically called by name for this person to be removed from their role, now this employee is moved to a classroom. All the spin in the world doesn't change those facts. I have heard our new superintendent say she would like to operationalize DEI, which is a great soundbite. However, there have been zero concrete plans communicated on what this looks like or how it will happen. There is no identified leadership for DEI in the district. This appears to be what a good friend of mine refers to as magical management. Management without a clear plan and leadership that happens by magic.
Lots gone on the last few years, and a lot can be interpreted by optics. There's people that are closer to situations than others. So given the last 2 weeks and the things that have happened in reference to Lodi, in reference to members of those teams, and also efforts over the number of years that have affected, there's always optics, right? And I can understand as a district decisions have to be made, and not everyone in the community is going to understand that. But I think it's also important to reference optics. Optics come across and perception comes across, especially given the last 3 years. So when there's a lot of things happening around diversity, people for and against, and calling out a lot of things, I think when you change what happens within a department, when you move people, it affects the optics. So a bit more optics, history, and some of these may be relevant, some of these may tie directly, just some history. So in 2010, there were a lot of issues around gifted services and what were ethics, and there was reasons for that. So November 2010, Lee starts to meet with the director of gifted services. About 2 years later, some community conversations happened as a result of the levy in September 2012. African Americans United for Lakota, there were a lot of issues in the African American community within this district, things being happened, students not feeling a part of the community. So conversations started to happen around that, and they also took in part with the levy discussions. In June of 2015, a 2-year strategic plan was put in place around diversity. mainly focused on African Americans' concerns, but also shared across concerns of many students. As a part of the strategic plan, there were student meetings, there were student discussions, and there were things shared around people not being accepted, people being disenfranchised, and people not being a part. So I know that efforts have to change and adjust, but one thing that's important, when we have a department for something, it shows care, it shows priority, and it shows importance. So when you take away a department and roll it up under something else, it takes away the optics of importance, care, and the need for it. So while there may have been needs and there may have been reasons for the decisions, the optics aren't good, and there probably could have been a better way of communicating those optics. Okay? So all I say that is to give a bit of history, give a bit of understanding, and also know that these efforts have been started and stopped. And how much money, if we're talking dollars, could have been saved if we just stayed consistently with our efforts. Because there's plenty of people that think money for gifted services could go someplace else. Disability services could go someplace else. Diversity efforts, military families could go someplace else. What's the bigger cost if you get rid of those programs versus dedicating to it? Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
My name is Jill Johnson, and I'm a parent of 2 students from the school district, and I have 2 issues to address. One is the disintegration of Lodi. First, the senior director who left was not replaced, and now the diversity practitioner, one of the 2 remaining personnel working on DEI efforts, has been reassigned. This is a huge interruption to the DEI initiative, which has the purpose of removing barriers to academic success and making sure all kids and families feel welcome. Dakota is a large school district, as you know, it's the first school district, and I'd like to know from the board how you are going to ensure that the DEI efforts remain strong for schools. It's what the community wants. We know that the success of all our children, so that's my first question. The second issue I have is the anti-trans staffing policy that is being proposed. This has nothing to do with protecting children and only amplifies the hateful rhetoric we continue to hear from one particular board member. I just completed a project for work about anti-trans folks and how they're hurting their LGBTQ+ youth. I interviewed 2 trans women activists, brilliant people, a parent of a trans child for this project. And so I just wanted to share with the board some things that I learned from talking to them in my research. One is that gender affirming care starts with creating a loving environment that is therapy and support. Social transitioning usually means a haircut, different clothes, new pronouns, maybe even name change. And then as trans youth hit puberty, they may start puberty blockers to keep a lower time throughout their life. Surgery is nearly non-existent for anyone under 18, so I want to put some information out there to combat the misinformation that people hear. The political debate about transgender rights is escalating at a dangerous rate, putting the physical and mental health of trans youth at risk.
Do. In this instance, it had to do with policies, and we are not those school districts. We are not Anthony Wayne. We are not some school district in Virginia or Nevada or even Dayton Public. We are Lakota, with our own unique student population, our own unique staff, our own unique community, our own Lakota culture that has been disrupted greatly in the last few years since politics were brought onto our school board. A culture developed and honed over time that has gotten better every year at supporting all students. We cannot take a step backwards. As Julie Schaefer has said on more than one occasion, our goal is to remove barriers to academic success. We accomplish that the Lakota way. I'm asking you as school board members to ask yourself the question, when I make this decision, am I removing barriers to success for students? Or am I erecting a new barrier that will keep some students from being successful? Also, I would like to see the master facilities plan moved along. It has been far too long that we have been talking about this, having community members involved, pulling them in to discuss this, and then we just kick it down the road for some other day. We need action now, and people who are responsible for doing that action need guidance in how to do it. Throwing them under the bus at policy meetings is not the way to go about that. Thank you.